right, good morning. So this is a gentle yoga class. This morning we're going to do about an hour worth of yoga. Now we're going to start with some reclining poses. We'll do some things with a strap. And you can also use some props to support your back so that you have a little bit of a shoulder opener. So there's a lot of different possibilities for that. So first of all, you might just want to get a yoga strap or something that you could use like a yoga strap, like a scarf, for example, like this, or a belt, or a dog leash, whatever you got handy. And just set that nearby. You won't need it right away, but something that you'll want within arm's reach. And then also, there's kind of a variety of ways that you can set yourself up for a shoulder opener. You could use 2 yoga blocks if you have yoga blocks at your house. One goes under the shoulder blades and one under your head. And if you use the blocks, it's really important to get the block in the right spot. If it's lower than your shoulder blades, it'll poke you in the back rather than work well. If it's up right under the shoulder blade so that the edge of this block is pretty much right on the edge of the bottom tip of the shoulder blades, or pretty darn close to that spot, then the shoulder blades will carry the weight and the bottom edge of the block won't poke you in the back, right? So if you feel like you're being poked by the block, or being sort of, the spine is being forced into a weird shape, the block isn't high enough. It needs to go high enough up your back that really the shoulder blades are where you rest. Now some people prefer the block to go lengthwise so that the shoulder blades kind of drop to either side. My preference is for the sideways, this way, but you can play with it and see which way you like better. Now, another way to do this is instead of using the yoga blocks would be to take a blanket and roll it up. Now the blanket can go in one of 2 ways. You can take it lengthwise so that it goes down the length of your spine, or you can put it sideways in that same sort of shoulder blade area so that it just elevates that shoulder blade area. So you could do it either way with a blanket. And of course, if you'd rather, you can use a throw pillow underneath your back so that it gives you a little lift in your shoulders. So I'm going to go for the blocks today. It'll take me a second to get myself positioned just right on the blocks. But again, once I get there, then I'm going to decide what to do with my legs, so I'll give you some options. So first, I have to position myself so that I feel like the block is about in the middle of my back. And again, that it's high enough up my back that my shoulder blades are really resting on the block. And then this guy is under the head. And so sometimes I have to play with like where the placement is so that it doesn't feel like my arms are being kind of pushed up around my ears. Just kind of find the just right spot. So this might take just a little bit, a couple tries. And then you can do the legs completely straight. You can put your legs in a butterfly where the one foot and then the other touches and the knees are open. Or if you'd rather, you can leave your feet on the floor and let your knees hang out in the air. So that's up to you. If the arms are closer to the body, it tends to land this a little more into the shoulder area. If the arms are farther away, you'll feel more in the chest muscles. So you'll just kind of pick based on how it feels to you. And then we're going to take a moment just to breathe deeply and rhythmically. for one more minute, yogis. We're going to take a nice big breath. Now, before I come off the blocks, I'm just going to bring my arms up over my head and kind of drop my triceps into a little bigger stretch. Then I'm going to take this guy out from under my head and then roll to the side to get the other one out. Now, for the blanket, you can probably just roll to the side and slip it out. And then once you've removed the blocks or the blanket, come on back onto your back. Just notice how it landed you. I like to do some little windshield wipers or a little back massage. Sometimes it feels good to me to rock the upper back a little bit side to side as well. Kind of massage all the areas where that block was hitting my back. Oh. So, that felt pretty good, yogis. I'm a fan of using that to kind of open up and bring a little more awareness to the breathing. So we're going to do some movements in the arms. So if we start, so you can put your feet in this little bridge position and then kind of start with your arms about chest level and grab an elbow on either side. Okay, now you can loosen this up and grab wrists if you need a little bit more room, or forearms, or you can stick with the elbows. As long as your arms are pretty close to about the distance of, or the width of your torso, you'll do a pretty good job. So we're going to start with the arms down here, and we're going to reach down. Now without lifting the head off the floor, lifting the shoulders off the floor, or elevating the hips at all, we're going to reach the elbows down towards, like we're going towards the knees. And then you're going to slowly bring the arms all the way up, reaching towards the ceiling, and now reaching overhead until you can't go any further. If you can go all the way to the ground, go all the way to the ground, okay? Then reach up, and again, without lifting the head or lifting the torso or lifting the hips, we're going all the way back, reaching the whole way. So we're going to do that twice more. Coming up, stretching through the arms. Try to feel the muscles in your back that we're actually accessing here to do this movement in our arms. And then one more time. Now switch which arm is on top, and then we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to stretch the arms down, and then come all the way up and overhead. Keep reaching up through the elbows, stretching out. So this is an exercise for balancing the action of the trapezius muscles in the back. Now they go from right up our neck, pretty much connected to the back of our skull, frankly. I think it's actually the C1 and 2 vertebra, but pretty close to the back of the head. And then they go all the way down almost to our waist. So this is a big muscle group. See if you can feel how when the arms are in different positions and we're reaching out over the head, versus as we start to come to the place where we're about over the chest, versus coming down and reaching towards the feet. Can you feel the difference in the fibers of the muscle that are working? it's all the same muscle, but it really has distinct fiber directions that change here. So this is our last one on this side, so we're just going to come all the way back. And when you're at the center, go ahead and release the arms, and you can give your arms a little shake just to release any tension from the arm itself. But see if you can feel the back, right? And sometimes I can even feel like a warmth in the pattern of the trapezius muscles, which kind of come out and then down. It's almost a diamond shape rather than a trapezoid shape, although I can see where they're coming from with the trapezoid. Oh. All right. I like just kind of doing some yoga and then noticing the effect. This is building on a skill set called interoception. And so when we take a moment to really feel things, it's very helpful to our kind of continued feedback loop from the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system is really more comprised of nerves that take information from the body and feed it to the brain than the motor nerves, which feed information from the brain out to the body, okay? It seems like it would be the same, but it's actually quite different in terms of how that information is processed. And so the more that we can kind of feel into the body and, and then transfer that to our conscious awareness, the more we're tapping into that restful parasympathetic nervous system. It's kind of cool. All right, so we're going to do another shoulder exercise now that we're here, but we're going to lay on our side. So the arms are essentially going to go like this. So usually a little bit of head support is helpful. So I'm going to use a block, but you could use a blanket or something softer if you like, okay? So the arms are starting at chest height, and I've got a block under my head, and I don't know if I'm hoping I'm on your screen, but if I'm not, maybe close. So arms are straight out front. We're going to take the arm that's on the top and go over the head like we're drawing a giant arch or a rainbow, and then out to the side, and without really rolling into the twist, so we're allowing this chest muscle to stretch, we're going to come straight back across, okay? So go up over the head, stretch out in the whole range of motion, and come straight back. Up over the head, and straight back. We're going to do that twice more. Over the head, really work that whole range of motion with some intention. Up over the head, and then come back. And that one can be kind of interesting for the shoulder stabilizing muscles. So notice how that went for you. We're going to roll back to the center. Before we do the other side, just take a little left-right shoulder temperature. See if you can feel a difference. And then we'll do the same thing, but on the opposite side. So rolling to the side, arms straight out in front. And then we're going to take this top arm over the head, reach out, and come back. And whatever space limitations you have, just work with your space limitations. Reach out, come back, reach out, come back, two more, reach out, come back, last one, reach out, come back. All right, so then we're going to come back to the center, and again, just taking a moment to notice where that landed the shoulders. Do they feel more even now? Is there a difference? Is one still a little tighter than the other? Now we'll come back to some shoulder work in a moment, but we're going to switch over to the hips. So we're going to start with the right leg held in the hands, and then the left leg going all the way straight. Now, with the left leg all the way straight, if you reach out through that leg, Do you feel a stretch on the top of your left thigh? And if you do, or in the hip, if you do, then that's enough. You hold steady. If you don't feel a stretch, reach and grab your foot or grab your ankle and bring the leg out to the right a little bit more, okay? So the right leg to the right will lift this left side up, then stretch out through that left leg and maybe even the left arm as well. And if there's a stretch here now, that's what we're doing. If you don't feel that sensation, pull your right thigh all the way to the ground. This will lift your left heel up, or left hip up, and then press out through your heel and stretch out that right side. And this drop off should give you enough room to stretch out that hip no matter what. Okay, so you just go back to wherever you felt the stretch first, and you go all the way to the extreme if you don't feel anything. So we're going to take 2 more breaths. And then we're going to release for a moment and just hold the right leg on the thigh part with both hands, or you can not hold it and let it go and just spin your foot. That'll work too. So we're going to spin the foot in circles. And then go the other direction with your circles. And then point and flex. Now holding steady here, hugging the leg in nice and tight. Last breath. Now we're going to release the leg, and this is where we'll need a strap. So you could, if you have the room, you can hold onto your big toe or your ankle joint instead, but the strap will give you a little bit more control and maybe even a loop to put your hand in. So if you want a loop, you can have a loop. All right? So with the strap kind of up on the ball of the foot, I can pull my toes down and push up through my heel and get into my calf muscles a little bit more. If I move the loop down closer to my heel, my toes will naturally go higher, and then this will take away some of the calf muscle and just allow me to kind of focus on the hamstrings. So it depends on where you want your stretch to land, or where you happen to be a little more on the tight side, as to how you might choose to arrange this. And again, there's like room to do a little rotation, there's room to press the leg a little straighter or bend the knee. So you can play with the stretch as we hang out with it for a bit more. Yogis, we're going to take 2 more breaths here. Now I'm going to use a throw pillow, but you can just as easily use a block. I'm going to put that under this hip so that as I lower this leg out to the side, I have a little bit of extra support so this inner thigh is not too spicy. Other ways that I can play with that is I can bend the knee or straighten the leg more. Or I can, again, rotate a little bit in or out. There's not as much room for me to rotate this direction, but there's a little bit. And then if I activate my core a little bit more and really pull my left hip down, I can get some stabilizing core work. This won't give you a six-pack, but it will help your back stay nice and strong. 30 more seconds or so. Nice big breath. And then we're going to come back to the center. Now I'm going to lose the strap, but I'm going to do one more pose. So that's going to be a twist. So I'm taking my legs over and kind of wrapping one around the other. You could also just stack them. And then let your upper back kind of roll towards the floor. You can decide on a direction for your head. So we're going to stay for about 2 more big breaths, yogis. Alright, so we're going to bring this knee back to the center. Oh, and then back with the other leg. And this is our chance to check things out, do a little movement. We've done all kinds of stuff with one leg that we haven't yet done with the other leg. And can you feel a difference between the two? And maybe even other parts of the body as well, the side of the waist or the back or the hip. So we're going to let the right leg rest this time. We're going to grab hold of the left leg and hold on to it. And again, if when you stretch your right leg out and you hug the left knee in tight, if there's a stretch on the front of your right hip, that's it. You're good. That's the spot. And then if that's not there, then hold the foot and bring it further out to the side. This will pull the pelvis in that direction. So you get a little bit more traction on this hip flexor stretch, or you can bring that knee all the way to the ground, which gives you this lift, and then the dropping over the edge of the thigh bone will help stretch out that hip. So you're just finding the stretch right there on the front of your hip. Working into that a little bit actively. Try not to tense up your mouth or your eyes while you do it. 2 more breaths. We're going to relax the system, let this leg kind of once again have its opportunity to let go, and then we'll spin this left foot in circles. Go the other direction. And then point and flex a bit. An opportunity to try to get my toes moving as well. All right, and then we're going to take this leg through the same 3 stretches stretches, 2 with the strap, 1 without. And again, even though our focus here is more on the left leg, we want the right leg to be able to relax. So if you're pulling your leg so far up that it lifts your pelvis, then maybe back off just a little bit so that right leg can stay a little softer, and do more work with the leg itself, kind of pressing up through the heel or adjusting the turn a little bit. And then we'll pause and breathe and hang out for a bit. Just a little bit longer, about 20 more seconds, yogis. Make sure you're breathing nice, deep, smooth breaths while we're hanging out with these stretches. Take one more for this stretch. And then with the exhale, we're going out to the side. I have to move just a little bit to this edge so I have a tiny bit more room. With the help of my pillow here and the strap itself, I have enough support that this isn't too spicy. But again, you can change that up a little bit by bending at your knee or making little changes, adding more support underneath. You can create a little more structure by engaging deeply through the core and trying to root this right hip and sit bone to the floor a little bit more. In order to do that, you have to sort of draw the sides of the waist in a little bit, which accesses some fairly deep abdominal muscles. It's nice. So stay for about another 30 seconds. Alright, yogis, take a big breath. And then we're going to come back to the center. And again, I'm going to lose the strap and then add my twist in. So, bending that knee, kind of wrapping it around the other a little bit and letting the legs come over. And then working the upper back down to the floor. So this becomes both a stretch for the chest and the shoulder as well as the hip. And then we'll pause here for a bit. stay for about another 25 seconds or so. You just take a big breath, and then we're coming back to the center. We'll give ourselves a little bit of a rinse. Now, we're pretty much done with the stuff we're going to do on our back until the very end for Shavasana. So when you're ready, and take your time, we're going to come to a seated position. Once you've gotten yourself into a seated position, then just do anything you need to do to make it a comfortable thing. Ooh. All right, so get comfy in your seated position, as I was saying. I'm gonna put my hair up out of the way because we're gonna work with the neck and shoulders. And I find this a little bit easier to deal with. Okay. So the first thing is we wanna get the spine to be stable so that we're not leaning forward or leaning back. And sometimes there's a tendency for the shoulders to want to hunch up to help. So we're going to try to keep the shoulders relaxed. So drop your chin towards your chest. And just for a moment, just notice if you feel any differences between the left and right side, just to start off. And then we're going to roll the head up and over one shoulder. And then back to the center and up and over the other shoulder. We're going to do this about 4 times. And go slow enough that you feel all the muscles in the neck. And try to notice if there's some that feel tighter than others. Now when you get back to the center, we're going to pause for a second and lift the head up. Now, one of the things we're going to try to figure out is which of the 2 muscles that kind of support the head on the neck vertebrae is potentially pulling more or less. Now, if you didn't feel any pulling or any tension or stress or strain in your neck, awesome. So you get to pick what you want to do in this next few seconds. But if you felt something, then we're going to try to figure out which muscle is the culprit. So there's a muscle that goes from the sternum and the collarbone up to where the jawbone attaches just at the back of the skull here, okay? So up behind the ear. It's called the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So it connects these parts of the body together. Now this muscle pulls the head forward in space, okay? And then there's another muscle that goes from the shoulder blade up to the back of the skull that pulls the head backwards in space, all right? So these 2 muscles, when one of them is tight or out of balance, exerts a force on the area where the skull meets the 2 upper vertebrae of the neck. And that area is super critical because that is where all of these nerves that are responsible for our ability to relax come out of the brain stem. So we're going to try to figure out if anything is tense in that area of our neck and give it an opportunity to release. So first we're going to drop the head over to the left shoulder, and you can go whichever direction, but just drop your head to one side. And then notice if you feel anything particularly tight. If you feel something tight on the right side, like if the right side is like, oh, I can really feel a tension or a stress there, then the muscle that's responsible is the sternocleidomastoid. If when you drop your head over, instead you feel pressure on the inside of the arc, then the muscle that's the culprit is the levator scapulae, okay? That muscle in the back. So depending on what we feel, we're gonna stretch one of those two areas. So if I'm feeling it on the right side, I'm gonna keep the head to the left, drop my arm out, and again, the muscle goes from here up to the back of my skull, so I'm gonna try to draw those two areas away from each other. So the chest moving this way and the head moving diagonally up. So it's like I'm trying to take my ear farther away from that collarbone, okay? Now, if it's the opposite, if I feel that crunchiness on the inside, then I'm gonna take my head over the opposite way, and then I'm gonna try to stretch the back part. So I'm gonna take my head forward and my shoulder blade back to stretch the muscle that lives there. Now, the good news is we're gonna stretch both, but you can start with the one that's tighter. So for me, the sternocleidomastoid is often the tighter one. So I'm gonna try to bring my breastbone and my collarbone further out to the side and take my head a little more to the left. Now we're gonna do 3 more big breaths with this. Now bring your hand back to your thigh, and we're going to do the opposite muscle. Okay, so I'm going to take my head over to the right because I was stretching the right side. Now I'm going to take my head to the other side, and I'm going to stretch the muscle in the back. If you did the muscle in the back first, then you'll switch sides and do the muscle in the front. So we're just going to complement. So now what I want to do is bring my shoulder blade down and my head forward to stretch this muscle that lives in here. And if it's not particularly tight, you won't feel a really strong sensation. That's okay. I'm just going to stretch the muscles that kind of operate on either side of the head to stabilize the head on the neck. 2 more breaths here. Now, I'm going to come back to the center before I go back to that same side. But the idea is to try to feel if there is a kind of a difference in the way the head positions on the neck. Right on. And it might be that one shoulder might feel slightly higher or lower. Just noticing what's there. Now, we're going to take the head over to the right. And I stretched first the sternocleidomastoid on my other side, so I'm going to stretch that side first. If you did it the other way, you're going to go back and stretch the back muscle first, okay? So again, I need to bring the back of my ear away from my collarbone, so I'm going to take this down and the back of my head up to stretch that muscle. And on this side it's not as tight, but I still notice it. Take nice deep breaths. Okay, take one more. Now we're going to bring the head back to neutral. And I'm going to go over the other way, and I'm going to stretch this muscle that's in the back of the neck, right? So I'm going to take my forehead forward and my shoulder blade down, and even back behind me with the arm. It's a tiny little muscle that we're after, so it might not be super apparent. If it's not tight and not pulling your skull too much, then chalk that up as a win. We're going to take 2 more big breaths. Alright, so bring your arm back, bring your head back, and then float it up. And then we're just going to notice the relationship, mostly what we're looking at is the relationship of the skull to the neck vertebrae, okay, and the muscles in the neck. You might also find some relationship to the shoulder, because again, one muscle connects this part to the skull, the other muscle connects the shoulder blade to the skull, and so we're noticing these muscles and paying attention to how they respond. So let's do some shoulder circles just for extra measure. And if you notice, like I sleep on one side more than the other, so my right side is more tight on a kind of chronically tight basis than my other. So periodically during the day, I will stretch my right side out, go the other direction with your shoulders from time to time, just because there's more of a pattern of tension there. Okay. So we're going to do this exercise of holding the elbows again, but we're going to do it with a little bit of a twist. So you're going to hold the elbows. We're going to try to keep the head still, and we're going to turn and twist. It's hard for me to keep my head still, so I really have to concentrate. Okay, so the elbows are low, twist, twist, twist. Now we're going to bring the elbows up to about the height of the shoulders, and try to keep the head still and twist. So we're twisting from the waist. Okay. See if you can feel like a change has happened to the muscles that you're using here. And then we're going to float the elbows all the way up overhead. Same idea. Try to keep the head mostly still and twist the upper body. Okay, bring the arms down. So what we just did was we did a release for the trapezius. Down here, lower trapezius, middle trapezius, upper trapezius. We're going to put the other arm on top, do the exact same thing, try to keep the head still. And this time, usually on the second side, or second round for me, I get a little more freedom of movement. See if that's true for you. Elbows up to shoulder height. Can you feel how that gets more into the middle part of your trapezius, near your shoulder blades? And again, that's a muscle that often, for those of us that have jobs where we lean over a desk, it gets pretty tight. So upper trapezius here. And this is mostly a release. Now that we've done this release, we're going to go into a twist. So we're going to take the right leg up. So I'm used to mirroring. But in any case, right leg up, your right leg, you do your right leg. We're going to sit up nice and tall, and we're going to keep the head level. We're not going to turn the head yet. So you're going to keep your chin level with your breastbone, and you're going to just imagine that we're picking the back of the skull up. So we're creating some length in that area that we just released. Now without turning your head, you're going to turn your torso. The head's just going to come along for the ride. We're going to turn the lower part of the back first. Then we're going to see if we can get the shoulder blades. So I'm going to put my hand down here on the floor and get my shoulder blades to move. So this shoulder blade's going to move forward, this shoulder blade's going to move back. And now I'm going to turn my head and my eyes in the same direction. So sit down into your sit bones, get a little taller through the back of your neck, and imagine that the pivot in the neck is coming from that back point rather than from the front of your head. And then keep breathing. Take one more breath. And then we're going to release our twist. We're going to take that right leg all the way out to the side, and then kind of fiddling a little bit into place, we're going to drop ourselves over into a side stretch. Now you can put some support under your legs if you like. I'm going to keep my leg more active, toes up, knee a little bent, to help keep everything stable. I might let my head really fall to the side as well, so I'm getting a little more on that side of my neck. few more breaths here. Come all the way up. For a moment, give everything a rinse. And I would like to just check and see, like, what's the end result of having done a pose? And sometimes I feel kind of like a little pleasant warmth or a little kind of effervescence, a lightness. Just notice if any of that's true for your pose. So we're gonna come back to the twist, but this time on the left side. Now again, there's a tendency for a lot of us to turn from the head first, right? So we're gonna consciously not do that, because when we turn from the head first, sometimes we pull the head out of alignment with the vertebrae, okay? So we're gonna keep the chin a little bit in, we're gonna lift through the back of the skull, we're gonna keep the chin lined up over the breastbone, we're gonna turn the belly button first, okay? So we'll get as much as we can around there. Hands on the floor, so you can grab your knee, grab the floor, and then shoulder blades are gonna move. So right shoulder blade forward, left shoulder blade back. So we get the twist in the upper back. And then we're gonna turn the head, but turning it as if pivoting from the back of the head instead of from the chin. So keeping some length there, and then breathing nice and deep, yogis. Take one more breath. And then we're gonna unpeel this now. I like to peel it first from my belly button and then from my head. So again, we're gonna take this left leg out so that we can create this side bending shape when your spine is ready to go into a side bending shape. And again, I'm gonna get a little more active with my leg here, really active with my shoulder and my arm here. You can be more passive if you like. Again, notice the impact on your neck. Do you need a little head support? Maybe you put your arm in there to give yourself a little bit of a head support. Notice the stretch on the side of the waist and be kind to your low back. Two more breaths. And we're going to come all the way up. And take a moment and rinse everything out. And again, notice the sort of impact of your practice. Is there a sense of lightness, of warmth? Is there crankiness or soreness? Because that also tells us stuff we want to know about our practice, like maybe we shouldn't do it that way again. Now, generally for me, it feels really good if I do asymmetrical work, like we did one side, left side, right side, to do something that's symmetrical. So you can have both your legs straight and close together, both your legs straight and far apart, or you can join me for this little butterfly shape. And I'm gonna keep a little bit of a diamond so I get a little bit closer to a tortoise rather than the bound angle version. So I'm gonna get my sit bones out from under me and fold my pelvis as far forward as it'll go. And then I'm gonna exert a little bit of attention on keeping the back of my neck long, okay? So again, I'm just sort of recreating some of the work I've already done here, and then lifting through the breastbone. So I'm not going to try to get my head close to my feet, because that is going to require that I bend. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a choice I could be making. But instead, because I just did all this work to create length in the back of my neck, I'm going to try to keep that length. And then notice the relationship, like how does the face take on the pose? Do your eyes get harder or flinty? Does your jaw tighten up? Do your shoulders want to hunch? Can you hold the shape with kindness in your eyes? And a little bit of a smile on your lips. A more gentle smile, rather than a grimace. This is a note to self. I can fool my brain a lot, but I cannot fool my nervous system. My body knows what's going on. So we're going to do one more breath here. And then we're going to float ourselves up. And depending on what you just did, if your legs were bent, you might want to straighten them. And if your legs were straight, you might want to bend them. And then give yourself a little bit of movement. Now, before we do Shavasana, we're going to do a little bit of pranayama. And we're not going to do a fancy pranayama. We're going to do a cooling pranayama that's fairly straightforward, okay? So we're going to pay attention to the left nostril, but we're not going to do any manipulation. We're just going to pay attention, okay? We're going to inhale through the left nostril, and then we're going to let the exhale just come out. You don't have to pay attention to which nostril, but you're going to try to let yourself exhale just a long, slow exhale, okay? If you start to feel like you're choking, let the exhale come out a little faster. That's too slow, okay? So we're going to just see, is your left nostril open at all? Because if your left nostril's blocked, it'll be hard to pay attention to the breath in that nostril. So if it's blocked, you're just going to inhale and then exhale, long, slow exhale, okay? But if you can feel like, okay, yeah, there's air moving through my left nostril. Inhale, exhale out. And then we're going to concentrate on inhaling. Just feel your left nostril. When you get to the top of the inhale, pause for a moment, and then exhale. Just pay attention to the exhale, nice and slow. When you get all the way to the bottom, you're going to do it again. Do 3 more rounds, but I want you to pay attention to something very specific. When you inhale, what happens to your heart rate? When you exhale, what happens to your heart rate? Okay? Now, it's often easier to pay attention to the heart rate at that point where you're holding the breath between the inhale and the exhale. Now drop the technique for a moment and just notice how you feel overall, having done that little brief moment of breath awareness. Now, just a couple of little notes. The left nostril, in pretty traditional yoga, and this goes back to the time between the Vedas and the Upanishads, so about 5,000 years. There's this notion that there's a kind of intuitive sense that there's a difference between the left and right hemispheres of the body, and in particular that we have some access to this through the nostrils, and that the left side is considered lunar, cooling, or calming, and the right side is considered solar, energizing, activating, okay? So if we focus on the left side, we're gonna both physically cool the body, but also emotionally and mentally cool or calm, okay? If you wanted to get more peppy, then if you concentrate on the right nostril, theoretically it's gonna bring your energy level up. Now, again, these are intuitive things that, you know, people sitting in meditation for long periods of time came up with. So it's possible that none of this will be true for you, but it's something to notice. And then the other thing we'll talk about at the end, which is this heart rate variability notion. So for now, we're gonna go into a Shavasana. And if you need to, you know, take a little hike because it's time for you to go back to work or something, that's cool. Otherwise, lay down. Get yourself comfy. Now I'm gonna use a blanket under my legs. So I've got a little bit of support. And let's just see if that kind of cool calmness actually worked and brings us into that state for Shavasana. Whoops. Might be calm before you smack your head on the furniture. Okay. So you might need like a little happy baby or something like that first, and then let yourself relax. yogis, we're not going to move right away, but just bring your awareness back to your breath and notice again the inhale and the exhale. Take one more big breath. Let go with a big sigh. And then we're going to wiggle our fingers and toes and stretch them out. Give the wrist and ankles a little movement. Stretch them out. Give the whole body a big stretch. Cuddle yourself up. And then we'll roll or rock ourselves into a seated position one way or another. So when our nervous system is functioning properly and we're able to fully relax, the heart rate will shift a little bit when we breathe, and when we intentionally lengthen out our exhales, it'll actually drop our heart rate. And so if you noticed that your heart rate kind of went up a little bit with the inhale and it goes down a little bit with your exhale, that's an important indicator that your body is relaxed. If it doesn't do that, it might mean that you're under a considerable amount of stress and pressure, and something to be aware of. So a little tool for you to check out, and then you can utilize some deep diaphragmatic breathing and your yoga practice to help bring you into that state that's a little bit more calm and peaceful. Take a nice big breath, yogis. Big deep sigh. Namaste.